Burt Lancaster is suddenly making more noise on the internet today than he did when drive-ins were full, and it is not because a studio found another dusty reel. Word has leaked that a private collector holds 32 pages from his secret diary, pages that could confirm the whispers you might have heard in barbershops and PTA parking lots but never saw in print. The midnight lovers, the beach houses, the battles he fought off camera for civil rights while the FBI kept a file on him. The story cuts to what still matters at our age. Reputations built on silence, the cost of living true when the world says sit down, and how one of Hollywood's toughest men may have carried a private tenderness that changes every film you thought you understood. He was born Burton Stephen Lancaster on November 2, 1913, in an East Harlem apartment above a dry goods store. His father worked for the post office. His mother managed 5 children during the pinch of the Depression, and Burt learned early that climbing fire escapes cost nothing. A scholarship invitation from New York University's basketball coach arrived just as a family tragedy. His mother's sudden cerebral hemorrhage snapped his attention away from formal classrooms. Grief sent him into settlement houses where he met Nick Cravat, another wiry teenager who could swing between parallel bars like a sparrow. Within a year, they were performing as the acrobatics on charity bills. Circus scouts took notice, and by 1932, Lancaster and Cravat traveled with the K Brothers troupe, living on coffee, applause, and the trust that a calloused hand would always catch them. Life under the big top did more than sculpt muscle. It trained him to master fear without blinking, to finish each routine whether a knee wrenched or a wrist slipped, and to hide pain behind a grin because the crowd needed reassurance that risk was beautiful. That lesson guided him when an ankle injury in 1939 forced him to abandon the trapeze. He sold ladies' lingerie at a department store, waited tables while singing baritone ditties, even tried door-to-door sales, but none of those jobs demanded the same union of nerve and grace. When the United States Army drafted him in 1943, he joined the Special Services Division, touring Italian bases and barn theaters where he could still leap onto improvised platforms in one smooth expansion of calf muscle. The war placed discipline on top of discipline, reinforcing the habit of masking private uncertainty behind public purpose. After discharge, he returned to New York with no steady plan beyond refusing mediocrity. A chance elevator meeting with Broadway producer Louis Catalanot landed him a part in A Sound of Hunting and an 8-week run. Hollywood agent Harold Hecht sat in the back row on closing night. Hecht loved the trapeze story, loved the grin even more, and soon offered Lancaster a screen test. The first Hollywood assignment, The Killers in 1946, presented him as a doomed boxer whose clenched jaw suggested deeper bruises. Audiences gasped when he performed his own fight scenes. Critics praised the melancholy beneath the muscle and predicted a star. At that moment, Lancaster understood applause means nothing if you cannot steer your own ship, so in 1951 he formed Hecht Hill Lancaster with Hecht and James Hill, an unheard-of arrangement that gave an actor voting rights on scripts and budgets. Independents produced art that traditional studios considered box office poison. Marty, in 1955, followed a shy butcher searching for love among working-class neighbors and walked off with Best Picture. Separate Tables. 3 years later, unwrapped loneliness in a quiet seaside hotel and drew rave reviews along with Oscar nominations. Owning a company also allowed Lancaster to pencil private weekends onto production calendars. Crew members saw empty spaces labeled personal and shrugged. Only a few closest friends suspected that these blank squares corresponded to drives up the Pacific Coast Highway, to borrowed convertibles, and to cabins shaded by eucalyptus, where a star who sold virility to the world could relax away from photographers. While studios pushed hero roles, Lancaster invested equal energy in public causes. He protested the Hollywood blacklist as early as 1947, lent money to striking projectionists, and backed political candidates who championed civil rights. His second wife, Norma Anderson, channeled activism through the League of Women Voters, operating a printing press in their Bel Air garage where voter registration leaflets rolled out by the hundreds. Together, they hosted a fundraiser for Martin Luther King Jr.'s Southern Christian Leadership Conference in the summer of '63, only weeks before the March on Washington galvanized the nation. The house glowed with spotlights, but the most powerful searchlight sat unseen across town in J. Edgar Hoover's office, where newly surfaced files show the Bureau kept close tabs on celebrities who financed what Hoover called subversive gatherings. Hoover's inspectors also logged chatter about men who explored same-gender affection. In hindsight, the irony feels thick, considering how many historians argue Hoover nursed secrets of his own. Those declassified pages add plausible texture to the whispers that Lancaster's private address book featured names the FBI itself revered or feared. 5 relationships in particular continue to haunt gossip columns and memoir side notes. The earliest was Cary Grant, a star so polished that even his shadow looked pressed and tailored. They met at a luncheon in 1948 and bonded over late-night ocean swims. Friends remember seeing matched monogrammed robes on a deck rail at a Malibu cliff house. Grant, eternally conscious of headline risk, pulled away once gossip magazine stringers began staking out the coastal road. Lancaster filed the episode under lessons in timing. Rock Hudson entered the story in the early 50s. Standing 6'4", subject to a contract that dictated both haircut schedule and dinner companions, Hudson negotiated privacy like a man walking a minefield. Passport records auctioned in 2024 show identical Baja entry stamps for Hudson and Lancaster on a holiday weekend. The producer calendar marked location scouting. The desert motels gave them 3 days of freedom at a stretch. Freedom that collapsed each time Hudson imagined his name above a scandal banner. Then came Marlon Brando, restless son of the actor's studio and enemy of convention. Their first conversation swung from civil liberties to Polynesian drum rhythms in the span of 5 minutes. Brando challenged Lancaster to a chess match on a picnic blanket, lost, flipped the board, and kissed him according to an anecdote repeated by biographer Gary Fishgall. The affair ran hot, cooled, reignited, and cooled again, leaving bruised egos but also mutual respect between two titans who could seldom share oxygen. The most surprising name may be Ricky Nelson, sweet-faced television son 12 years Lancaster's junior. They met during a rehearsal break when Nelson complained about the shallow roles his studio fed him. Lancaster offered advice about script control. The conversation deepened, and a brief tenderness bloomed that both agreed could not survive tabloid attention. Decades later, Nelson reportedly called Lancaster the older brother every ambitious kid needs. More shadowy still is the rumor of a 2-week liaison with Hoover himself. A single surviving confidant claimed Lancaster described those nights as dialogue scenes in a spy film, full of coded phrases and curt goodbyes. The friendship, if that word fits, evaporated as soon as Hoover sensed that closeness undermined authority. Control mattered more than affection. For the public record, Lancaster clung to a conventional narrative. He married 3 times. His first wife was June Ernst, a fellow trapeze artist whose mother had been a trailblazing aerialist in the 1920s. Circus lore suited them both, but the marriage frayed when Lancaster's post-injury restlessness demanded fresh challenges. Court filings vary on when they separated, some listing 1940, others 1946, confusion that mirrors the rest of his early timeline. Norma Anderson arrived during a United Service Organization's production in wartime Italy. Legend says she spotted Burt near the stage door, nudged a soldier, and asked whether that handsome lieutenant had dinner plans. They wed stateside in 1946 and raised 5 children. The house doubled as printing warehouse and debate hall. Lancaster visited Mississippi during Freedom Summer, while Norma glued envelopes for get-out-the-vote drives. Activism expanded as career strain grew. They separated in 1966 and finalized divorce 3 years later, a process complicated by overlapping press tours and political obligations. The next partner was fiery Jackie Bone, hairdresser on the set of The Professionals. Their romance spiraled into a tabloid sensation in 1969 when an argument exploded at a dinner hosted by director Sidney Pollack. Bone swung a wine bottle, the glass shattered across Lancaster's eyebrow, and makeup artists spent the next decade masking the faint scar. The relationship staggered on until Bone experienced a profound religious awakening and chose a quieter path incompatible with Lancaster's restless social calendar. In 1990, he married Susan Martin, who had been assisting with scripts at Universal. By then, he had survived a gallbladder crisis, arterial bypass, and a minor stroke. He moved through hallways more slowly, but his eyes still brightened at the mention of union negotiations. Susan described evenings spent cataloging his memorabilia while he dictated reflections on forgotten stunt rigs. 4 years later, a pre-dawn heart episode ended his life. He asked for no funeral. His ashes were scattered beneath a broad oak in Westwood Memorial Park, and a ground plaque small enough that many tourists miss it. The films, however, keep introducing themselves to new generations. Watch the beach scene in From Here to Eternity, sand clinging to his shoulders while Deborah Kerr's hand curls over his neck. Each muscle remembers a trapeze bar. In Elmer Gantry, he strides through revival tents with a preacher's thunder that hides a con man's grin, and the performance wins him the Academy Award. In Birdman of Alcatraz, he sits motionless for pages of dialogue, coaxing sympathy for a convicted killer who studies caged finches. Such range convinced critics he could play anything. The Swimmer, filmed in 1968, fared poorly in its own era, but now enjoys a perfect critical score on Rotten Tomatoes and a dedicated subreddit that dissects every surreal frame. Atlantic City, released in 1980, brought him another Oscar nomination, and features a tender moment where an aged small-time gangster perfumes lemon cologne onto his hands before meeting the woman who might redeem him. Modern viewers often notice subtext about passing vitality, because Lancaster at that point had lost some trapeze agility, but none of the simmering charisma that first sold tickets. He never retired from activism. He joined the National Board of the American Civil Liberties Union and filmed a primetime spot defending the organization when political ads mocked it. He accepted the job of chairing a Roger Baldwin Foundation branch in Los Angeles and cast a decisive vote to keep Ramona Ripston as regional director at a time when some doubted a woman could manage the role. He gave speeches condemning colorization of classic black and white films, telling Congress that history earns its shadows, and that adding synthetic colors is like repainting the Mona Lisa for spring fashion. When Rock Hudson's AIDS announcement shocked Hollywood, Lancaster stepped onto a benefit stage at the Shrine Auditorium and read Hudson's final public letter. Industry advisors warned that any association with the epidemic could dent an older star's legacy. Yet he refused to stay silent. Courage, he argued backstage, is meaningless once it demands no cost. By the late 1980s, health crises multiplied. A gallbladder infection nearly killed him. Strokes blurred speech for weeks at a time. Still, he traveled to Washington to testify before a Senate committee on the need to preserve aging nitrate film stock. He told reporters that cinema raised him just as much as the circus net, and both deserved respect. So why does the rumored diary grip people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who watched Lancaster between drive-in speaker poles or in plush downtown theaters? Because it invites them to revisit their own history. Many grew up in households that admired square-jawed heroes, yet never spoke about relatives whose love fell outside approved lines. Discovering that one of Hollywood's boldest men may have navigated the same hidden territory reframes memories. Admiration expands rather than shrinks. If toughness coexisted with vulnerability in his life, then maybe similar contrasts always lived in the viewer's world too. Social media creators half his age build supercuts of Lancaster dueling Tony Curtis in the sweet smell of success, while overlaying captions that ponder coded glances. Historian podcasts debate whether the private papers will ever surface, and collectors feverishly bid on supposed fragments bearing his signature. Skeptics point to irregular watermarks, but the possibility remains. Estate lawyers refuse comment, only confirming a sealed bundle exists with instructions that it remain closed until 2035 or 10 years after the last surviving child passes. That fuse is already burning. If the pages open and confirm half the rumors, classic film courses will revise lecture notes overnight. Students will watch Lancaster wade through chlorinated pools in The Swimmer and recognize a new resonance in each self-assured grin. Critics might reconsider how masculine icons perform gender for the camera while improvising cover stories once the lights cooled. And if the bundle stays locked, the speculation itself still serves. It keeps older audiences engaged, invites conversation across generations, and reminds everyone that legends are stitched from conflicting truths. Imagine a family living room in 1958. Parents adjust rabbit ear antennas, children sit cross-legged beneath the pillow speaker, and Lancaster swings across the castle courtyard in The Flame and the Arrow. Decades later, those children, now grandparents, stream the same film in digital clarity. They learn that the hero who lifted swords also lifted protest signs, that he fought for artist unions and for civil rights, that he might have loved more broadly than fan magazines dared print. The picture remains thrilling, but the context deepens, transforming nostalgia into insight. His greatest stunt was not any vault or horseback leap captured on celluloid. It was the lifelong balance between public adoration and private truth. To glide across that tightrope, he needed flawless timing, stubborn endurance, and the same cool steadiness that once helped him catch a trapeze in mid-swing. Should the diary reveal every step, it will not diminish the feats already immortalized on screen. Instead, it will illuminate the heartbeat behind them, reminding viewers that real strength often hides in the deliberate, quiet places. Picture the oak tree in Westwood at dawn, dew on the grass, one modest plaque glinting. Somewhere else, a sealed envelope rests in a climate-controlled drawer, its adhesive aging atom by atom. Whether that adhesive breaks under a lawyer's letter opener or remains intact forever, the rumble that shook film forums in 2025 already changed the conversation. Lancaster still looks out from old publicity stills, eyes sparkling, as if daring every watcher to ponder what courage means and whether secrecy can be a form of survival. The projector may clatter to a halt, the streaming queue may finish, the rumor threads may scroll down the timeline, yet Burt Lancaster keeps asking us to lean closer, listen between the lines, and trust that the leap is worth it. That invitation, like the man himself, has outlived the circus tents and the red carpets, waiting for anyone curious enough to follow the hush of Pacific surf to a memory of freedom.